Scarlett Johansson, stop suing people.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
She's a litigious gal. I'll say that about her. Yeah, Scarlett Johansson was just in a big kerfuffle. That's a good word. With OpenAI about the voice that is used in ChatGPT 4.0. And I'll tell you, it didn't do OpenAI any favors to have the CEO, Sam Altman, go on Twitter the day that ChatGPT 4.0 debuted. And Altman, comes out with this one-word tweet, her. Altman, how dumb are you, man? Come on. Like, what are you doing? OpenAI approached Scarlett Johansson about providing the voice, one of the voices for ChatGPT 4.0, and apparently she turned them down. And then OpenAI moves on and develops the technology, and some people say it sounds like her. I don't think it really sounds like her at all. I didn't trigger in my mind when I heard the voice. When it debuted, it was a big deal. And I didn't make the connection with Scarlett Johansson. But as I said, didn't do OpenAI any favors by having Altman go out and tweet that. And next thing you know, Johansson's threatening litigation, and OpenAI has to pull the voice. So Scarlett Johansson just has this track record of lawsuits. I think she got hacked, and some nudes from her cell phone were released, and so she sued over that. And then famously, she sued Disney regarding Black Widow when that was released. During the pandemic, Disney came out with this strategy where they released films that were supposed to be released in theaters. They released them instead on Disney Plus. So we had Jungle Cruise and we had Black Widow released straight to Disney Plus when they were supposed to go to theaters. And Scarlett Johansson lost her mind over that because she was supposed to get a percentage of the gross profits from box office. And so she sued Disney because she was upset that the box office receipts were going to be severely depressed by this sort of simultaneous release onto Disney Plus. And so they settled out of court on that. That was an extremely bad look for Scarlett Johansson when that happened because, you're in the middle of a pandemic. People are out of work. They can't earn money because they have to stay home. And she got $20 million, I believe it was, salary to make the movie. And there she is crying about she's not going to get, what she's owed in terms of points. And yeah, it was a very, very bad look for her. But all that to say, yes, this is a quite a litigious young lady. Not so young anymore, I guess. Anyway, hey, I'm the Pop Culture Fiend, and I am back again. I always try to make that rhyme and sound cool, and it never does. But hey, I'm here for episode 6 of The Streaming Wars. I've been covering the streaming industry since 2021, and I come out with 2 episodes a year where I cover, and I really need to do more actually, but it's been about 2 episodes a year where I cover the streaming industry, talk about trends, new developments, where the industry is headed, and all of the important news, and give perspectives and predictions, and just sort of completely report on this really exciting industry. This is one of the most exciting times in entertainment, and it deserves to be covered. So that's what I'm trying to do here. I just spent an hour literally trying to set myself up here for this recording because for some reason my Audacity settings were not set up correctly. I haven't touched them, but somehow I had to go into like the control panel or whatever and adjust some things. And I'm trying to figure out why my recording levels were so low. And I'm like, is it Audacity? Is it my laptop? volume settings, and it was my laptop microphone input volume settings. And I'm just like, I've never touched these. Like, why were they working, every other time I've done this and they're not working now? It's so annoying. So it took me like an hour to figure that out. And do the test or whatever, the mic checks and all that. And so I'm finally sitting here ready to record. And so here we go.
Sweet mother of God, what is the holdup?
So let's get into it here. And the first thing that I want to talk about in episode 6 here of the Streaming Wars is churn. Churn, churn, churn. No, that's something different. That's the birds. Let's talk about churn. So churn is the term in the streaming industry used to describe subscribers who cancel their memberships to a particular streaming service and sort of move on, or maybe they'll come back, but regardless, they were there and they canceled and they're out of there. So, and it happens quite a bit. And I was on LinkedIn and I was reading this article about, the streaming industry and about churn. And the article outlines how 35% of subscribers, more than a third of streaming subscribers, are regularly jumping between platforms, between streaming platforms, and they're pausing and restarting their subscriptions to access the content that they want when they want. So, for example, hey, Netflix is about to drop a new season of Bridgerton. Let me get back on Netflix. And then they watch Bridgerton. A month later, they canceled their Netflix subscription again. So that kind of a thing. So I read this article, and the number one comment, or the spotlighted comment, is by a gentleman who goes on and on about how churn is rampant in the industry, and basically it's going to make streaming completely unsustainable. And he's basically, I guess, predicting the downfall of the streaming industry because of churn. And I'm just like scratching my head because I'm like, not sustainable. This is an industry that is really just about 5 years old. Okay. 2019 is very late 2019. I think it was November, was when Disney Plus premiered. And prior to that, we had Netflix and we had Hulu, and that was by and large what we had in terms of, significant numbers of subscribers to a streaming service. And so November 2019, Disney Plus, right at the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic, comes out with its streaming platform, and we're off to the races. This is quickly followed by HBO Max and Paramount Plus and Peacock, et cetera, et cetera. And we've got what we've got now, rampant competition and what we call the streaming wars, or what I call the streaming wars. And so my point is, this is an industry that is really only just 5 years old. When you really want to talk about, we've got several different players and we've got real competition. So how can you possibly say in an industry that is so young that it's not sustainable? Look, the streamers are going to figure it out. They're going to figure out how to combat churn and overcome it, just like the mobile carriers did. The mobile phone carriers, Verizon, T-Mobile, etc., they're facing the same sort of thing. People are constantly switching their phone carriers. They pay off their device, and then they're like, yeah, I'm going to switch over to Verizon now. I'm going to maybe get a better deal over there. I'm going to get unlimited data, or they're going to give me a free iPad or something like that. There's incentives. There's grandfather clauses. Hey, if you stay with us, we'll keep you at this. So we promise to keep you at this certain price point for the length of your subscription. So, you've got those kinds of incentives that streamers can offer. Price freezes, not to mention bundling. So, for example, Comcast, which is the largest, I believe they are the largest cable company in the U.S. They're the first or second. And they are the very largest ISP, internet service provider in the US. So Comcast came out recently with its Stream Saver bundle, which is a bundle of Netflix, Peacock, and Apple TV Plus. You can get all of those for a reduced price, a significantly reduced price, with your Comcast cable subscription. Basically, it's a way for Comcast to tie your streaming subscription to your cable subscription. So they're getting their hooks into you that way. And these are the types of strategies that will effectively, at some point, keep churn in check. So the streamers are going to figure it out. Bundles, incentives, grandfather clauses, price freezes, all those things that I talked about. There's all kinds of ways that they can, the streamers will get their hooks into you, however you want to characterize it. But that was the first thing that I really wanted to cover, because that was really annoying to me when I saw that comment. And oh yeah, by the way, this guy who posted that comment about the unsustainability of it all, he's taking a victory lap. I've been talking about churn and the impact on the industry and how it's been, how it's negatively affecting the industry. I've been talking about it for over a year, and he has all these links to these other articles that he or these other posts that he put on LinkedIn, and I'm just like, good for you, guy. I mean, how many times have I predicted something or said something or written something that was sort of predictive or insightful or whatever, and gotten no credit for it? What the heck is this guy trying to do here? It was really interesting. Churn is a real thing and it deserves to be talked about, but to go to the lengths that this person was going to, I think went a little too far. But let's move on to our next topic here, right after a word from our sponsor for this episode, which is... Okay, so our next topic is, I'm going to call this the always on philosophy. And this is really interesting. So what we're seeing or about to see in the industry is movement towards creating a separation in the on-demand library of content for each streamer. So all of the streamers, Netflix, Peacock, Hulu, HBO Max, et cetera, I should just call it Max. Sorry about that. But all of them have these vast libraries of content. So what's going to happen, what's starting to take place, is that all this content is sort of getting segmented out in their libraries. So reality, action, sitcoms, history. We were getting all of these sort of different buckets. And well, you say that always existed. We could always just sort of search and filter for, these types of things. But here's the difference. These buckets or these categories of content are not just sitting there passively as containers for different categories of content. They would be always on. So, for example, there would be an action-oriented channel, let's say, a comedy, home improvement, history, all of these sort of, you can come up with a million different categories. And those would be all actively streaming content whenever you switched over to that particular channel. So if you're on, let's say, Max, there is a DC sort of channel, category, whatever. Right now, the way it exists is that if you go to that DC channel or category, you can take a look at all of the DC Comics related content that's on there. So the different Superman movies, the different Batman movies, the Justice League stuff, the Birds of Prey, Joker, all of that. So you can pick, any of these particular films or TV shows and stream them on demand, right? That's what streaming is all about. But in the future, what's going to happen is that is sort of all going to be programmed. So 24/7, there's going to be something from that particular buckets or category of DC playing, and it's going to be always on. And it's basically just programmed content like we saw with cable television, where, we had, Home and Garden. There was always a Home and Garden related show on, or the History Channel. There's always a history related, you follow what I'm saying. So we're sort of, like I said, very much going to slide back, it seems, towards that model of cable television. And the closest thing right now that we're seeing to this, platforms like Tubi and Pluto TV and things like that, but it's moving over to the big streamers, let's say, the premier streamers, like the Hulus, like the Maxes and the Netflixes and things like that. And the bigger picture idea behind this is to always keep you on the app. Always keep, like, they don't want you to ever leave Netflix. They don't want you to ever leave Hulu. They want you to stay on that and get everything that you need from their platform. So very, very interesting. And we're about to come full circle here. I can see maybe in 10 years or so where all the streamers kind of look like cable television looked back when it was at its height.
Get the fuck out of here. No, I cannot. It's serious.
The next thing I'm going to talk about, and this is super relevant when we're talking about the competition and the actual streaming wars, the battle, for subscribers. I want to talk about differentiators. How can these streamers outdo each other? What can they offer that will make an individual sign up for their streaming service as opposed to someone else's? And one of the key differentiators is going to be sports. We've already started to see this. Bleacher Report has partnered with Max. So we've got some integration there. Disney, Fox, and Warner Brothers Discovery were in conversation to bundle all of their sports content into one single app, and that's going to be interesting because are we talking about a new streamer here? But yeah, Disney, Fox, and Warner Brothers Discovery were going to, or at least we're talking about, combining all their sports content and making it available in some form or another, either in a new streaming service or sort of a shared, maybe they were going to share their content so that you get all that content on your choice of Disney Plus, Hulu, or Max. We've seen March Madness not move over entirely, but become available on Max as well. The Olympics are on Peacock. The Olympics are starting next month, and the coverage is going to be split among NBC and Peacock. So there are going to be some things, numerous events that you're only going to be able to see on Peacock. And so that's going to be, there's going to be a big push by NBCUniversal to get people to subscribe to Peacock so that they can watch the Olympic coverage that they want to see, because it's not going to be available. Not all of it is going to be available on NBC proper. Of course, the big flagship events, so to speak, the premier events, so a lot of the track and field, a lot of the swimming, a lot of the gymnastics, that will still be on NBC. But a lot of the heats and the prelims and the other, many of the other events that a lot of people are still interested in are not going to be available on NBC. You can only be able to see that on Peacock. So that's going to be interesting. Also, as we're talking about, how sports is becoming a differentiator and how these streamers are sort of battling to offer sports content to entice, new subscribers and keep subscribers and keep people from leaving the platform, as we talked about when we were talking about churn. WWE is coming to Netflix. WWE has really bounced around quite a bit in its time. It's been on Spike TV. It's been on USA Network. It's sort of been all. Was it on CW at any point? I can't remember. I know it's been on a ton of different networks. Sci-Fi, I remember that. Yeah, and now it's coming to Netflix. And not to be outdone, Max is in discussions with AEW, which is a rival wrestling promotion, if you didn't know. AEW is a rival to WWE. So Max is in discussion to obtain rights to broadcast that. And Netflix is also getting, and this is a big one, 2 Christmas Day NFL games, which is super exciting. I heard someone joke the other day, how long till every NFL game is only available on streaming? And we could get there. NBC got the rights to an NFL playoff game for Peacock.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs?
This was last fall, December, I believe it was. And it was a Kansas City Chiefs game, and it was only available on Peacock. It was exclusively on Peacock. I really want to underline that. And it did extremely well. It was one of the highest rated streaming shows/events in history. So Netflix, as I just mentioned, paid attention to that as the entire industry did. And so they're getting 2 Christmas Day NFL games. All right. Well, also in the sports realm, we've got TNT basketball games. We saw those move over onto Max. So those are available there as well as on TNT. Amazon Prime has made a deal with the NBA, a 10-year deal for a significant number of regular season and postseason games. So again, we're seeing all sorts of efforts by the streamers to obtain rights to high-level sporting events, whether it's Premier League soccer, NFL, NBA, anything that they can do to add more subscribers, draw more subscribers, and keep people on the platform. Look for this, though. This is really going to, and no one's talking about this, and they really should be. There's a lot that can be gained through the integration of fantasy football. So look for integration there, and also look for integration of sports betting, because hey, that is coming, and that's going to come to not only streaming, that's going to come to regular network television sports very soon. We've got in-game betting, and it's only natural that there's going to, again, be sort of an overlay or a button or some sort of mechanism whereby you can click this on your remote and bring up the sports betting app of your choice, BetMGM or ESPN Bet or DraftKings or whatever the case may be. You click a button and you're getting everything that you want to get done in terms of your betting. So integration, I strongly believe, with gambling is coming to, again, not only network television sports, but also to the sports that we're going to see on the streaming platforms. And the other differentiator that I want to talk about today is gaming. And by that, I mean e-gaming, electronic gaming. Netflix has started a fledgling video game service, which I believe has rolled out in certain markets. You've got Comcast, which considered buying EA Sports last year. And so EA Sports, we know, is the maker of Madden, and they make the FIFA video game as well. Very successful company. And Disney invested $1.5 billion with a B in Epic Games, and Epic Games is the maker of Fortnite and other games as well. But Disney invested $1.5 billion with Epic Games. So what we're seeing here with all of this talk and these deals and partnerships between these streaming services and these game makers, coming down the line, we're going to see a lot more integration related to electronic gaming that you're going to be able to do/play right there on, your streaming platform. And what do we talk about? The theme that keeps coming up, none of the streamers want you to ever leave their platform for anything. If you want to do gaming, do it here. If you want to watch news, do it here. If you want to watch a movie, here. You want to get the weather, do it. Like, they want to offer everything. And so we're going to see the streamers really try and provide that. An all-in-one, one-stop shop, let's say, for all of your, all of your entertainment needs.
Sweet.
Okay, and I guess the last thing that I really want to talk about, last major topic that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to dive into content a little bit. I don't spend a whole lot of time talking about content, or I haven't lately, because I really want this audio blog to focus on, the business of streaming and talk about, where the industry is headed and new developments and news and things like that. Because if I dive too much into content, you can sort of get that in a lot of different places. But I do want to talk about content today, though. And this is always fun, actually. And I'm going to talk about it through the lens of the upfronts, which were held recently. And the upfronts are basically TV's version of CinemaCon, where all of the different studios, production companies, networks, streamers, etc., they all descend upon New York City and they talk about all of the programming and shows and content that they have in development that's about to be introduced. So here are the streaming components that were presented and discussed, some of them at the upfronts. And this is kind of exciting because it'll give you a look at the content that you're going to be able to see pretty soon on your favorite streamer. So let's talk about first Amazon Prime. And Amazon Prime at the upfronts, they talked about the sequel that is coming to Roadhouse. And Roadhouse was the remake of the 1980s action film starring Patrick Swayze. Really became sort of a cult classic in a lot of ways. A total guy movie with all of the drinking and the fighting and the Swayze rips the guy's throat out and it's like I said, it's a real guy movie. They did the remake with Jake Gyllenhaal and the Patrick Swayze role, so they're doing a sequel to that. There's going to be a Tomb Raider series. They're going to try this again. I believe there was a series on in the 90s. I want to say, called Relic Hunter. And Tia Carrera, I think, was the star of that. And that was just a total ripoff of Tomb Raider. But yes, there's going to be a Tomb Raider series coming to Amazon Prime, as well as a new version of Jeopardy, the game show Jeopardy, that's completely focused on pop culture questions. The Boys and also Mr. and Mrs. Smith got renewed. Mr. and Mrs. Smith being the TV series based on the film that starred Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. And then, of course, there was a lot of talk and buzz at the upfronts about The Lord of the Rings on Amazon. And we're going to be treated to a Legally Blonde prequel. And that's being produced by Reese Witherspoon, who was the star of the original Legally Blonde and the sequel. So moving on now to Peacock. They mostly focused on the movie Wicked, which is coming out in the fall, and that's Wicked is the based on the Broadway play. And NBCUniversal also really focused on its linear TV offerings, shows like Brilliant Minds and their Thanksgiving Day Parade coverage, which is always a high ratings getter for them. They plugged the Today Show. I'm bringing all this up because, as I said, none of that really is streaming content. None of that is to be found on Peacock. So it was kind of curious that NBCUniversal didn't have a lot to talk about besides the Olympics when it comes to their streaming platform, Peacock. So maybe a little bit disappointing there. Not too sure what was going on there. But moving on to Disney Plus and Disney, of course, always has big news and always has tons of content. And for better or for worse, it almost always revolves around either Marvel or Star Wars, right? Disney's really, and I was going to break this out into a separate, discussion here on this audio blog episode. I was really going to break this out as a separate thing. Disney is really struggling right now. They remain, the platform Disney Plus remains in the red, so not profitable, and they're just continue to be so reliant and continue to repeatedly tap Star Wars and Marvel IP for content. And I think everyone agrees that it's gotten to the point of saturation, and no one really has any excitement for the next Marvel series or the next Marvel movie for that matter, or the next Star Wars series. There have been so many. We've seen, on Disney Plus, we've seen Obi-Wan and The Mandalorian and Ahsoka, and we've seen, it's too much. I'm about to do a blog post on popculturefiend.com about how Star Wars has just become so, I guess, unexciting and pedestrian. And it's a shame, really, because the Star Wars universe and the Star Wars movies used to be events. I mean, they used to be something that you would look forward to for months, literally. And now, with all of the films and the filler films like Rogue One and the Han Solo movie, and now especially because of the Disney shows, the Star Wars universe is just ho hum now. And again, I'm going to save a lot of this for the blog post that I do, but look for that on popculturefiend.com. But moving on with what I was saying about the upfronts, Disney talked about The Acolyte, which yet another Star Wars series starring Carrie-Anne Moss, who was famous from The Matrix. They talked about, of course, Deadpool and Wolverine, which I really think is really going to save the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it's on life support right now. Lots of failures in recent years. The Marvels, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, both severely underperformed. Tanked is a word that you could use. And then there's also been some underperformance in terms of the series that we're seeing on Disney Plus that are tied into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I think that Deadpool and Wolverine is also going to actually save the summer box office for 2024, which is off to a horrendous start. And honestly, I mean, I'm going to digress a little bit here, but I think we're getting to a point possibly where movie theaters are only going to be for, tentpole releases and prestige films, comic book movies, and big properties like that, movies that they expect to make, $500 million. And so everything else, we may get to a point where everything else just goes right to streaming. Honestly, we've seen this. There was a bit of a bounce back for the movie industry box office coming out of COVID, with Top Gun 2 and other films. But since then, we've sort of we've been regressing back to disappointment has become sort of the norm when it comes to a lot of these big releases that we were expecting big things from. And I don't know, for sure, the movie industry is changing. And that's one of the reasons that I'm, covering streaming, because it's reconfiguring and sort of remodeling the entire way we consume movies and television and content. So, but moving on to Warner Brothers Discovery, which is the parent company for Max, the Max streaming service. They had a ton to talk about. House of the Dragon 2, House of the Dragon 2, House of the Dragon Season 2, Dune Part 2. We've got Wonka, which came out about 3 months ago. We've got 8 episodes of the new series The Penguin, which is part of the DC Cinematic Universe. So that should be super exciting. And as a matter of fact, Max has a lot coming down the pipeline there in terms of the DCU. James Gunn came over from Marvel. He was the director of the Guardians of the Galaxy films. He's now part of DC Universe, and he's bringing, or sort of shepherding, producing, and directing in some cases, several DC Universe related series for Max, including Paradise Lost, which will be a series about the Mascara, which is the island that Wonder Woman is from. There's the series Lanterns, which I'm super excited for. That's, of course, about the Green Lantern Corps. Booster Gold. Booster Gold's a really interesting character. He is from the future, and he comes back to the 21st century, or the 20th century originally, I guess, in the comic books. And he brings technology and capabilities from his time, the future, and uses them in the 20th century to just sort of become a superhero. He's just an ordinary person in his time and era, but by going back in time, he's able to become a superhero. So Booster Gold is going to be coming to Max, as well as eventually the next iteration of Superman. And so Superman is coming to theaters, make no mistake about that, in 2025. And that will reboot that franchise, and we'll see what's to come after that. But yes, a lot that Warner Brothers Discovery shared at the upfronts, and a lot to look forward to on Max. And I guess I'll finish up here talking about a couple other things that are coming to Max, including another Game of Thrones spinoff to go along with House of the Dragon, and new seasons of The Last of Us, White Lotus, and just like that, the Sex and the City sequel. So there you go. There's some information and some news for you from the upfronts. And in other news, let's talk about a few odds and ends that are very important to the streaming industry. The Showtime streamer has been shut down. That's been absorbed into Paramount Plus, very similar to when HBO Plus was absorbed into Max. Now we don't have sort of all of these different sort of competing outlets or competing platforms for content. Everything's available now on Paramount Plus. You know, it all comes together now. Speaking of Paramount, they were about to be acquired by Skydance Media, which is a big production company, and they've produced films like the Mission Impossible series and Top Gun 2 and The Tomorrow War, Gemini Man, The Old Guard. Speaking of The Old Guard, they're doing a sequel to The Old Guard. If anyone really enjoyed that Netflix movie, that's the one where Charlize Theron plays a superhero. Very different take on the superhero movie. But in any case, that was done by Skydance, and they've done a ton of other stuff like the Jack Reacher series. And anyway, Skydance was about to acquire Paramount, but that deal got nixed, and now actually Paramount is talking with Sony, with Sony, for a $26 billion sell/merger. I don't know where talks stand with that, but that is something that, to keep an eye on. And still more Paramount news. Lots of Paramount Plus and Paramount news in this episode. But their CEO is out.
So long, sucker!
And the new CEO is none other than Brian Robbins, who was running Nickelodeon, which is a subsidiary of Paramount. And if you didn't know, Brian Robbins is he's a former actor, and he was on Head of the Class back in the late 80s, early 90s. And Brian Robbins starred on that series with none other than Dan Schneider, who has been in the news a lot lately because of a documentary that was released about the Nickelodeon shows. Dan Schneider was the creator and producer of iCarly, Sam and Cat, and Victorious. And Schneider, of course, you might have heard lots of shady stuff apparently took place back in those days, apparently, when those shows were being produced. And just kind of funny that these two guys from this forgotten sitcom, Head of the Class, became such important figures in entertainment and heads of studios, and it's kind of amazing. Anyway, other news: Netflix is going to stop reporting subscriber numbers. This is big. the streaming industry has never really given an honest representation of their subscriber numbers. Every streamer does it a little bit different, and it's very, very sus, I would say, to say the least. So, for example, I'll give a couple examples. So, for example, Amazon Prime doesn't report Amazon Prime subscribers. It just reports the number of people who have Amazon Prime. And the reason they do that is because Amazon Prime, when you sign up for Amazon Prime, which I'm talking about the 2-day delivery service, you can get anything delivered in 2 days or less. When you sign up for that, you also get Amazon Prime Video as a throw-in or as part of your, as part of your subscription, part of your purchase. And so even though you may not have any interest in television at all, you never turn on Amazon Prime, you never use it. It doesn't matter because Amazon Prime reports you as a subscriber to their Amazon Prime Video service. So that's an example sort of the shady kinds of practices that take place when it comes to reporting in the streaming industry. Again, what are we doing here? That's a complete misrepresentation most of the time. And so now Netflix has announced that they are going to just completely stop reporting their subscriber numbers beginning in 2025. And they're saying that the reason that they're going to no longer do this is because total subscribers is no longer the best indicator of customer satisfaction. And it also doesn't paint a very good picture, according to them, of how the company is performing financially and otherwise. And so, there's something to be said for that, opinion or that point of view. Disney, for example, has the second most subscribers after Netflix among the streaming services, but it's actually doing quite poorly. So to the point that Netflix is making, subscriber numbers, subscriber totals don't necessarily tell the best story or tell the most informative story. Netflix has a paid sharing initiative where the primary account holder on a Netflix account or subscription can add an extra member for a small monthly fee. So you can add someone to your Netflix account for an extra fee. This is not talking about password sharing. This is the way Netflix wants you to do it. But anyway, you can add this extra member, but that extra member is not counted as a separate subscriber because that person is on your account. So Netflix is saying, well, we've got extra viewers, but they're not being reflected in our subscriber numbers because of the way that we have implemented this, paid sharing initiative. And so, again, that is some of their justification for why they're no longer going to report subscriber numbers because they think it's misleading in that way. In the end, honestly, the most important number for any streaming service is average revenue per user, ARPU. And so that is really the number that is most prescriptive, I would say, for how a streamer is doing. I know the Roku channel is doing excellent in that regard. And as advertising continues to be rolled out on all of the streaming platforms, we'll get a much clearer picture of which of the streamers are doing well with regards to the ARPU. And so I guess with that, I'm going to wrap up this episode of the Streaming Wars and apologize if I sound a little weird because I've had a cold or a sinus thing, whatever you want to call it. But I guess it doesn't really matter because no one listens to this audio blog anyway. So what am I apologizing for, right? No one's going to hear it. All right. So once again, the website is popculturefiend.com for highlights, remembrances, and discussion of American pop culture. Lots of cool articles there. 80s and 90s pop culture is really my jam, but there's plenty of stuff on there, talking about contemporary pop culture. So check that out if you like. And in the meantime, I'll just say
bye, diddly-eye. So long.
God bless you.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Homer.
Take care.
Adios.
So long.
Very well.
Yar.
Bon voyage.
Toodle-oo.
So long.
Bye-bye.
Ta-ta.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Sayonara, dude.
So long.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye now. Bye.
See ya. Bye. Bye-bye.
Big
It sound right, boy.